It's time for us to begin this morning, so if we'll go ahead and up our Bibles and kind of settle in. So we are in the Gospel of John and in chapter 9 this morning, continuing our look at the story of the life and work of the Son of God, especially as it angles towards its inevitable outcome, which is not only the goal of the text, which is that you may believe and that by believing you may have life in his name, but all the things that are incumbent in the fulfillment of the promise of the kingdom of God. Before we get into our study then, though, let's go ahead and begin with prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for our time together this morning. We thank you for the encouragement that is found in your message. And we deeply appreciate the connectedness of disciples together. Help us as participants in the kingdom to allow the Spirit's work to be made complete in us so that our salvation is connected well into the kingdom as is your design and desire. Please forgive us of our sins, and we offer this prayer in your Son's name. Amen. All right, so a couple of things to just kind of connect some dots, if you will, on a pathway. As we've noted already, the Gospel of John includes a series of questions and answers in different ways. One of the ones I've noticed, and you'll get something from me this week because I've been thinking about it and I wrote about it. That's how I think. Like I think about this and I write it down. Is that there are 24 core questions that I found that John asks and answers. And they're all about who is Jesus. But I'll hand that out to you guys next week as kind of getting ready for some other parts of our second half of the course. So you have that. And they're all around the idea of who is Jesus. Why is that important to us? What's the impact of it? And then we've also categorized historically that there are some substantial or significant signs. Big, big miracles. Things that are in a human-defined category of this is extra important. And a sign is what? Give me two definitions for sign. Both a more common, non-biblically related definition, and then maybe inside the Bible. So if I said, hey, what's a sign? What's that first level answer? Indicator. It indicates, what else? What else do signs do?
Directions.
Directs, yeah. Especially if it's like the bridge is out. That's a really important sign. If it's slippery when wet, that's an album and a sign. So you have those. This is a big thing. The sign might say, bridge ice is over early. And then we go, why? Because there's no insulation under the bridge, and so it gets cold quicker. Like, that's the reason the ice over early or faster. So, sign number one. That's part of the theological, the biblical understanding of sign, right? It indicates, it directs. But what does it indicate? And what does it direct in the biblical sense? And how does that word sign differ from our common sign? In the way we use it.
Sign from God. Sign.
So it's a sign, an origin is attached to it. That this is God in the broadest sense, or in the narrowed sense, the Father, the Son, the Spirit, have done something that should make me think about something. Some of those think-sos, actually consider-sos, are like, hey, this guy over here who's saying something, what he's saying is important, right? You will know that this is my prophet by X, Y, or Z. Oh, okay, that's a big thing. But not all signs are connected to a prophet. Some signs are prophetic, but they're not necessarily coming out of the voice of a human, right? Would you say that a donkey can serve as a sign? Yeah, especially if he starts talking, by the way. Like 100%. That is a sign in this category, but they're still doing the same thing. They're like, hey, you need to listen to what God, broadly or specifically, is telling me. There are 8 of them in the Gospel of John. 8 big signs that are more notable than some of the other miraculous things. In my careful but just kind of accommodative definition of a miracle is anything that doesn't follow the normal rules. Normally when you die, you do not come up a second time. That's a normal rule. But in the Old Testament and the New Testament, resurrection occurs where someone who is dead lives a second time. You're still going to have to live by the normal rules after you're resurrected. You might die, and then you can die again. Because you're back in the normal rules. Other breaking of the normal rules, you normally don't get water from rock, right? Rocks don't normally, like you're in the desert. You know what I really would like right now is a rock. That would make it really good. But the rule breaks, because God breaks the rule, because the rules don't function for him in the same way, and says, I'm going to do this. You also don't draw up people from rocks and dust. We don't build them that way, right? Normal process. So a miracle is something that doesn't follow those rules, the normal way of things. Rich?
Can they be a miracle and a sign?
And they can. This is the last thing in this space. Just because it's a miracle does not necessarily indicate that it's the kind of sign you're looking for. They're all generally signatory to God's power. But it doesn't have to be a miracle for it to be a sign. It can be the natural order of things, and it can still indicate or direct. Romans 1, 2, and 3 is a reminder that the very creation itself, which is miraculous, but we don't always think about it that way, is a sign about the person and nature of God. That you can see his undeniable nature and his character in the creation. Oh, by the way, you and I are also in that basket. We are, what do we carry with us according to Genesis? The image of God, whom we're made in his image. We should be signatory signs indicating that God formed us and made us. Especially if we've worked on letting the Spirit be in us and help in our full outcome of salvation and rescue. So, John here will have us getting our 6th sign. It's going to involve the breaking of the normal rules in a very specific and particular way. And it's going to include a whole lot of unique bits and pieces of conversation that often now become attached to how we think Jesus should be understood. Accurately so, but we want to make sure we're not just like picking the good parts that we like. Like it's not like at the buffet line where you go through and you're like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to skip the whole vegetable tray and go straight to dessert. Well, listen, it's perfectly fine to get dessert first, but you should get the vegetable tray too. If you want to fight about that, we can fight about that later. But there's nothing saying you can't have dessert first, except for mom, and then you should listen to mom. All right, so let's start by thinking about John by reading a portion of it together. And we're going to look right now at John 9, 1 through 7. And let's see. Rich, you want to read that for us right now?
1 through 7.
Yep.
As he passed by, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? And Jesus answered, it was not that this man sinned or his parents, but that the works of God might be displayed in him. We must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when
a whole basket of wild things that happen in that passage. One of the smaller ones is a narrative echo, where there's this thing that keeps happening that doesn't make sense until you step 3 or 4 feet back from the picture, and you're like, hey, what's going on? And that's this thing of passing by. It occurs a couple of times, most notably with Jesus, when they're on the water, and Jesus passes them by, as if it's no big deal to walk through in a storm of water. No big deal, just passing by. It happens here in a more smaller narrative sense, that God is passing by. There are 3 of the Psalms that talk about this idea of God passing by his people and God in a big sense. And then you go in the Exodus story, God as represented by both the cloud and the fire and the other broader senses of God passing his people, his creation by. And you could even include the earliest iterations of it in the garden, as God is walking through the garden looking to pass by them, and he does. And he finds them hiding because of the shame of their rebellion. Same grammar is being used. They translate it in different wording to match the way our English sentences function, but these are the same images. And so here's God just walking by. Finds a man born blind on the basis of a conversation, this post-confrontation. And his responses to these things are not the prevailing wisdom. How many of you have ever heard that if you drink a caffeinated beverage, it does not count as hydration? Like you're not going to be hydrated. Is that, everyone's like, absolutely, that's the way it is. Steve, you heard that before? How much water is in a cup of coffee?
Nearly all, most of it. It's dirty water.
It's caffeine, like it's bean water, right? It's bean water. And there's a cup. That's a cup of water. If caffeinated beverages do not count as hydration, raise your hand if you should be a shriveled up, dehydrated mess and dead. So maybe our prevailing wisdom has some truth. Listen, it is a diuretic. It will cause possible increased amounts of body mechanisms or metabolism to push out a little bit more. But the more accustomed you are to caffeine, the less effect that has. So if you've been drinking a cup of coffee or 4 cups of coffee since you were 12 and you're now not 12, it doesn't have as much impact on you like it used to. And it probably would be better for all of us to drink more water. That's a fair thing. But they're not a 1-to-1 ratio. Because if that's the case, then like 70% of us should be dead from dehydration. And if you drink only water and you're not a caffeine drinker, you're awesome. Don't need to change. And if you drink caffeine, awesome. That's awesome too. Just make sure in moderation is part of that. But the idea is prevailing wisdom. This is what we think is true. And the prevailing solution was, if you have a cup of coffee, make sure you have 8 ounces of water, 1-to-1. Easy to apply. Probably a really great outcome. You should have that water. You really should. It's good for the rest of your systems. It's not a bad thing. But it doesn't necessarily mean that this is because that caffeine water is so diuretic, pushing out, making you become dehydrated, that you're going to die. End of the world. When they looked at a blind person, they only had one answer as to why they were blind. Had to be because of sin. Had to be. And, let me ask a question. Is there a sense in which they were true? Is there a sense in which his blindness, their blindness, is because of sin? From the consequences of the garden. Something changed in the garden where, oh, wait a minute, they can't stay here because if they do, they'll be immortal. Their whole world changed. So sin caused a change in the world in some way that now people die. But that's not what they're talking about, right? They're narrowing it down and saying, this is more immediate. This is not because of what happened then. They've made 2 steps. It's because, clearly, he sinned or his parents sinned. Now, does the Bible already say that's not how it works? Do they have that part of the Bible available to them at this point in time? Old Testament says what concerning the consequences of sin? Is it the person who sins or their child who dies? Like, you're responsible. So, are they looking for that answer from Jesus? Well, no, he had to have sinned. Because look, here's a text in Ezekiel, there's text in Psalms. Jesus doesn't actually even truly get into a huge theological debate. Instead, he shifts. He says, hey, you know what? Neither of those things, your two questions, neither of those things are the accurate answer. But the works of God should be revealed in him. So here's the next step. He's here for you to learn. Now you're the blind man for a second. How many of people here rely heavily on their ability to see, to do stuff? How much of your livelihood is based on your capacity to see things? Everybody. Like, look, I have to wear these little extra seers so I can see things, to do things now. And get new ones on an annual basis. It's a new thing for me. I guess it's a big deal, right? But how would it be if I learned that my infirmities, my brokenness, my broken parts and pieces that don't work just right are necessary to reveal part of God's plan? Because that's part of the story. This guy is going to serve as a part, like the seasoning and the base ingredients for a miracle to tell them whom Jesus is. And he's there for that purpose. Not because of sin, not because of Adam's and Eve's misdeeds, but the works of the glory, the works of God should be revealed to him. So instead of guilt, Jesus reframes the whole dialogue and says, this is a chance for you to know where glory is. And by the way, that man was still glorious before God before he became able to see. He was just as much an image bearer of humankind's role in that sense before and after the miracle, and should never have been seen as anything less than that. He also does the miracle in a way that's a mix of things. We already know he has the capacity to do miracles by saying this is how it's going to be. He's not dead. He's alive. That's an understood reality. Somebody touched me. My power went out from me. We know that that's in the Gospels, that someone is healed simply by having enough faith to reach, and whatever mechanisms are going on, they're healed. But he does this other thing here. I'm going to grab some mud. I'm going to do this way. He anoints the man's eyes with mud and then says, go wash in the pool of Siloam, which means sent. It's a place where you can go to the pool today. It's not functioning as a pool because of change in water tables and the buildup of the city, but you can go there. It's like a square pool looking thing now, and they're excavating the old pool down below. There were two pools together. I think there's some great values there. He heals with earth and sends the man to sent. That's what Siloam means. So you're going to be sent to sent, if you're looking at it in the original language. And then so he also links together ideas of the creation, baptism, but most importantly, in the miraculous sense, his identity as the light to the world. Michael, did you have something? Were you leaning? You're chewing on something there.
It wasn't exactly relevant, but since you can tell I was thinking about it.
No, the brain was braining.
This pool, is it one of those places that is near or about here, or no, this is the place where it's at?
No, absolutely no. Like, it's one of the few places where we don't know exactly where people were standing at this very relatively small location, but we know precisely where the pool is. It's a upper pool system that was built up in Roman occupation time frame all the way into the end of the city of Jerusalem at that point. Covered over in the final destruction when they razed the whole temple, excavated, and the upper pool is like a rectangular-ish shape next to two modern, I say modern, they're like 700 years old, churches. And then there's a drainage system that goes down into the lower pool section, which is currently being excavated. And so like, these are the spots. This is like, we know, now where was Jesus, where was the man? That's not specified at a level of high detail. So we don't know that one. But of the things you can know, it's about as serious as you can get. It's about as accurate as it can get. As this thing goes forward, this is starting in verses 8 through 12. Eric, could you read for us a little bit? We're going to read 8 through 12, chapter 9.
His neighbors and those who had seen him before as a beggar said, "Isn't this the one who used to sit begging?" Some said, "He's the one." Others were saying, "No, but he looks like him." He kept saying, "I'm the one." So they asked him, "How were your eyes open?" He answered, "The man called Jesus made mud, spread it on my eyes, and told me, 'Go to Siloam and wash.' So when I went to wash, I received my sight." "Where is he?" they asked. "I don't know," he said.
It's a wild story, right? Like this guy is known to them. They live right. This is not a big area. The distance between where the pool is at and where the excavation of the lower section of the pool is at is like Michael's office to the Alamo across the corner of the Noonan Square. Like that's like the geographic space we're talking about. That's not a lot of distance, right? You can walk that at a slow pace in 10 minutes. Like you're just moseying. You can mosey in 10 minutes. Michael?
So I find it funny that they ask him, "Where's he at?" He says, "I don't know," because he couldn't see at that time.
Yeah. Listen, there's irony in this. Like,
I think I couldn't see when we were doing this.
listen, if you want to see catch some irony and stuff, you'll note that in one of the gospel accounts, it's very particular that the writer had to identify that he was the faster of the two of them. And they were both young men at that point in time. And every young man I know would do the exact same thing. It's no different than in the narrative sense where in the Marvel movies, on your left becomes a thing, where I'm passing you because I'm faster than you. He's quicker. So there's a lot of that in the way in which the writers of the Bible are telling us things. He was sent to sent. I don't know where he is. Whether it was by his vision, I didn't see him, but he saw him. He was blind, but Jesus is the light of the world. And there's that shift of ideas from what we think light is to what God's light is to what it means to be made in the image of God, to have the light of God within us. And their whole thing of, is it really you? I mean, you look like him, but is that you? Is that really you? David Shockley was one of the members of the congregation where I first started preaching full-time in just south of Shreveport, Louisiana. And I remember going to Home Depot with David when Jill was having a bridal shower. All the guys, they took me on an adventure, which means go get tools to set this human being up to take care of his family. And so we're at Home Depot, and Daniel was there, his oldest boy. I'm watching this all go down. And Daniel's probably like 9 at the time, maybe 9 to 11 range in age. And David's walking around, and we're looking at stuff, and David gets a couple stalls ahead of me at Home Depot, and Daniel gets right behind him, standing behind him, and he's jumping up, and I can't hear what he's saying, but he's putting his hand close to the top of the back of his dad's head. And I'm like, what's going on there? And he steps, I get a little closer, he's jumping up, bald spot, bald spot, bald spot. If you see somebody around 50 to 70 years old from the backside looking down, how many of us older gentlemen, and I'm including my mask right now, Those of us who may or may not have had our yearbooks engraved in stone, that's us, not just one. How many of us look the same because there's a bald spot and graying hair and it's just a matter of time till we all look the same? It's like, I don't want to believe that's true, but it's true, right? So, to a certain degree, I can understand. Especially if his blindness was notable. I've got friends who were born with retinitis, or this RP condition, retinitis pigmentosus, where they were born able to see, and their eyes decay substantially so much they can't see anymore. And you can see it. You can see their eyes change. And others I've known were born blind. And it's obvious. Your eyes are part of your non-verbal communicative system. And if that changes, who are you? You don't look the same. Look, that's different. At other levels, I understand. But their confusion of it, wait a minute, you say this is who you are. Well, then who did this? Who made this change? Because I have two motivations to ask that question. Listen, my hip's got no cartilage. I'm going to that guy. If he can make you able to see, and he heals you, I got to find that out. Or I don't believe. Equal options. Equal outcomes, if you will, and how that plays out. The text scoots forward. Trey, do you want to read for us, if you would? This is from John 9, 8 through 12. Excuse me, in the next section, 13 through 17.
They brought to the Pharisees the man who had formerly been blind. Now it was the Sabbath day when Jesus made the mud and opened his eyes. So the Pharisees again asked him how he had received his sight. And he said to them, "He put mud on my eyes, and I washed, and I see." Some of the Pharisees said, "This man is not from God, for he does not keep the Sabbath." But others said, "How can a man who is a sinner do such signs?" And there was division among them. So they said again to the blind man, "What do you say about him, since he has opened your eyes?" He said, "He is a prophet."
It's not wild, but is it on brand to how we perceive the Pharisees to be? One of the dangers is not seeing ourselves in them, because that's part of the reason they're in this story. They're not just identified as like the antagonist to the truth tellers that are around Jesus. They're also there to teach us about humanity and how we can be and make sure that we don't stay that way, because this is a apologetic. This is to prove whom Jesus is. And there's also something that is revealed here in this Pharisaical response. Remember, he redirected the first question that they were theologically wrong about as to who sinned, them or or him, like his parents or him. Next level, the Pharisees' response: you can't be working on the Sabbath. Forever I asked myself the question, what kind of work are they complaining about? And there's actually a tie-in. When Jesus chooses to make mud, that's on the list of prohibitive behaviors that the law says don't do on the Sabbath. Don't make bricks. Don't work with clay. One step back. What did the slaves do in captivity before they were given the law? They made bricks. It actually was a big part of their pain experience. Their suffering is tied to this job. And so Jesus, same words being used, needs clay to put in this man's eye so that he can see again. So whether that's intentional or unintentional connections, it's always difficult to know if this is purposeful or not. But the Pharisees' response say, he's working. You can't do that. And by the way, they really hammered down it in their non-biblical law interpretation inside the Pharisees' use of the rules, not to do that thing. Remember, everything Jesus does is purposed. There's intention by it. He's not just randomly hanging out and going, you know what, today I think I'm going to go do this, see what happens, see how it plays out. The way to remember that is in the interaction between he and his mother at the wedding feast. He says, it's not my time. He still is obedient to his mother, while he's also obedient to his Father in heaven. But he doesn't then go, okay, well, I guess it's time to start preaching. The kingdom needs to come today. No. Things move forward, incrementally so, until it is the right time. Same thing is going on here as this interrogation goes. He can't do that on the Sabbath. I suggest to you that this is actually him, again, theologically reassessing and resetting their interpretation of the law. By the way, they weren't actually following it anyway. Like, they weren't doing the thing that they said they should do. Jesus wasn't breaking any rules here in that sense at all, but he's certainly teaching them about the hypocrisy of their law. Because the thing that he did was prohibited by their interpretation, but it brought sight to the blind. And the answer should have been, you can see, that's fundamentally amazing. That's wild. Let's go find him. But their answer was, he can't be from God. That's not a sign. He's got to be from somewhere else, from somebody else. Because we can't swallow the fact that he's from God. Because if that's true, I'm wrong. We're wrong. And like John was saying in the wilderness, repent, because the kingdom of heaven is here. And he's walking among you, is what is slowly dripping through their reality. In verse 17, who do you say about him, or what do you say about him since he opened your eyes? He is a prophet. That's one of those lovely parts of the Bible where both things about it are true. He opened their eyes. He opened his eyes, right? Literally. But he also opened his eyes to understand that Jesus is a prophet. Whose eyes are still closed? Most of those, Pharisees. Whose eyes are still closed today?
Non-believers. All non-believers.
Anyone who's doing the same thing. It can also be a believer. Pharisees absolutely are believers in God. Broken, destroyed theology, broken, destroyed relationship, absolutely believers. But they can be blind. You and I can be believers who are blind too. Doesn't mean that we stay that way, because look, maybe we all need a little spiritual LASIK from time to time. Maybe that's the best metaphor, but if it works, it works. Steve?
You mentioned that Jesus did things for a purpose. If Jesus had the power to just speak and the man would be healed, but by mixing the saliva with the dirt and making mud and put on his eyes, that led to this here. This was a work.
Oh, yeah.
Without that, you might not have had that.
Yeah, and for decades, I've tried to figure that one out. And I just recently read and figured out. Once again, I don't know everything. That was the first level. Yeah, you're just as idiot as you thought you were. But now you learn something that makes more sense. Their response makes more sense. But then it has implications. Like, hey, he's poking at it. He's really pushing at them to try to change. Because he loves them. He doesn't hate the Pharisees. He loves every one of them there. But sometimes you've got to redirect. And like, hey, this is the thing. We've got to fix the thing. Talk plainly about the thing. The thing you're doing, it's not right. Let's challenge it. Let's challenge the system. Verses 18 through 23. Larry, you want to read for us?
But the Jews did not believe concerning him that he had been blind and received his sight until they called the parents of him who had received his sight. And they asked him, saying, is this your son, who you say was born blind? Then how does he now see? His parents answered them and said, we know that this is our son and that he was born blind, but by what means he now sees, we do not know. Or who opened his eyes, we do not know. He is of age, ask him. He will speak for himself.
Yep.
And then,
We'll stop right there. Here's a question. I was going to ask this a different way, but I think this is probably a safer ask. How many of you sat in the principal's office because they called your parents because of what you did? Because I was going to ask the other question, how many of you parents had to get out of the principal's office? That's not fair. But if you want to admit that you're that guy, I did it in elementary school, happened in middle school. I did get my parents called to the office in high school, but thankfully it wasn't because I was the problem. I was poorly trying to solve the problem. They still had to come and like testify. Hey, what's your kid doing? Why does he think the way he thinks? Why does he act the way he thinks? What's going on there? What are all those bits and pieces? Very normal thing in that sense. But I think also this is them trying to reconcile their theology, all the things they've concluded about what the Bible teaches to them, and the reality that's playing out in front of them. Well, maybe he wasn't actually born blind. On a regular basis, if you're going to some of the larger shopping center spaces, you might encounter somebody with like a violin and a big sign that says, "Give my family money," and a song playing kind of semi-loudly there. And when you're far away, does it look like they're playing that violin? I'm going to tell you 99.99999 dash or instances, he's not playing the violin. He's karaoke. He's really good at it. If you unplug the amplifier, he'll keep scrubbing along for a second before he realizes that you have exposed him. And that's part of my skeptic nature. Like, I'm a skeptic. I get, hey, maybe he wasn't blind. Maybe this is just a scam. We should prove that. And from my standpoint, yeah, prove it. Because if he is someone who wasn't born blind, I want to know that too. Because if it was a legit miracle, my belief should go up. If it's someone faking it, and they had fakers in the first century too, I don't want to believe. So even though I can catch that their theology is broken, their approach is broken, it's a fair, legitimate, apologetic question. Who is Jesus? How accurate are his claims? Is he who he says he is? Now his parents do a very parent-level thing. I don't know what got into this kid's mind. That's what they said about me. We raised him better than that. That's also what they said about me. Both of those statements were mostly true. Yes, I was kind of, sort of, most certainly, almost always raised better than how I behaved. Even in the feral existence of my upbringing, the standards were always higher than my behavior. I think that's probably the case for everybody else. But in the context of this conversation, we get extra information. They feared them. They didn't want to be accountable for the answer, indicating they knew that what their son was saying is true. True stuff, true facts. For the Jews had already agreed, they knew the outcome, that if anyone should confess Jesus to be the Christ, he was to be put out of the synagogue. Whew. That's a big deal. In a community that's close-knit, that's tight, and the synagogue is every single ounce of your interconnectedness and difference from all the other things. As a Jew living in occupied territory, Roman-held territory, they would then be without identity. Romans wouldn't care about them. The Roman people wouldn't care about them. This would be equivalent historically to shunning. This would be the worst version in your mind of whatever you think biblical withdrawal is. So imagine the worst version of that. This is like that plus one. And the way that we should understand it, its implications. So their fear is legitimate. Their fear is concerned. It's also faithless. to a degree too. That's part of this here. And faith should have, if they had faith that this kind of miracle should do, like my son was blind and he can see. My son was blind and he could see. Then you would go, absolutely, I believe. In fact, I'm next in line. And so is my third cousin on my aunt's side because she doesn't have a leg. And we're carrying over a pallet right now. But they're humans and they're afraid. And fear's a thing too. So there's a lot of all of these things going on that also occur the moment you choose to confess your belief. If you had any kind of struggle to be public about your faith because you were afraid how your family was going to respond, that's your space. See, they were afraid. And being afraid is okay. Faith then lets us do things that our fear would stop us from. They weren't there yet. Maybe they'll get there. You might not be at the same spot that somebody else is. Last part of this text. This starts in verse 24, when it's actually going to go through verse 41 and kind of a chunk. We only have 3 minutes, so I'm going to have to cover some of this next week too. Not getting really good with my timing in this John study. I think I'm covering too many big chunks. But for the second time, they called the man who had been born blind and said to him, "Give glory to God. We know this man, that this man is a sinner." From John 1 to John 9, how much sin is recorded in Jesus' life's behavior? Is he out is he carousing and running with the boys? Nah. Like, in the narratives of the life of Jesus, he's hanging out of the temple and asking and answering and listening to Bible questions go down. He's escaping the authorities as his family flees in an exodus of sorts in order to survive a purge of his family. And then coming back. He's serving, he's engaging, he's participating, he's teaching. He answers, "Whether I know, or whether he is a sinner, I do not know. One thing I do know. I was blind, now I see." They said to him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes? I told you already, and you would not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples?" Oh, see, again, that's the intentionality of the clay creates the context for this now high-level dialogue. You want to become his disciple? Do you want to be part of his crowd? Continues on. We kind of pay attention to this last part. Jesus heard that they had cast him out, and having found him, he said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" That's one of the messianic terms for Jesus. He answered, "And who is he, sir, that I may believe in him?" Jesus said to him, "You have seen him, and it is he who is speaking to you." He said, "Lord, I believe." And he worshipped him. Jesus said, "For judgment I came into this world, that those who do not see may see, and those who see may become blind." Some of the Pharisees near him heard these things and said to him, "Are we also blind?" Jesus said to them, "If you were blind, you would have no guilt. But now that you say we see, your guilt remains." One of the best full chapter context in the Bible about what belief really accomplishes. What it means to really believe. It's not about the facts. It's about the implications after it. That's it for our time this morning. We'll cover a few more bits of chapter 9 next week, but we're obviously moving forward into the 10th chapter.